Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Ekev, the third Sedra in the book of Devarim, in the book of Deuteronomy. And we dedicate this learning to the safe and speedy release, rescue, miraculous of all of the hostages in Gaza and the safety and security of all of the soldiers in the IDF as they undertake this mission to protect the Jews in the land of Israel, to restore peace with God's help, and please God, they should all come back safely, having secured the victory that we dream and pray about for. And when we look at this week's Sedra and the relevance and the up-to-date nature of the words that are being said, of the sentiments that are being uttered, is as always uncanny. And I think that we can pick up and we can look at the theme of memory that comes in this week's Sedra. But I first want to start at the end of the Sedra. Unusually, we normally start at the very beginning, not just because it's a key song, but if we look at the end psukim of the Sedra, that is Deuteronomy Devarim chapter 11, from Pasuk Kavdala 24, the words read, Kol hamakom asher tidroch kaf raglachem, every place upon which the soles of your feet will tread, bow on it, lachem yehieh, shall be for you, min hamidbar v'halavanon, for your boundary will be from the desert and the Lebanon, min hanahar, nahar pras, from the river, the Euphrates River, v'ad hayom ha'acharon, and to the western sea, Yehieh Gavolchem, will be your borders. And as I read these words from the Torah, I think about how our enemies and their supporters have hijacked this phrase, from the river to the sea. And we need to see that it is actually the words in the Torah that are telling us which river and which sea and which people are the inhabitants of this land. And that is the Jewish people on the promise of Hashem. Lo yisyatsev ish bifnechem. No man will stand before you. Pachtachem u'morachem yitain Hashem Elokechem al pnei kol ha'aretz. The God, your God, will cast the fear and dread of you upon all the land, asher tidrochuva kasher diber lachem, where you will tread just like he said to you. And with these words at the end of the Sedra ringing in our ears, we can really tune into the source of our strength, to the source of our connection to Eretz Yisrael, to Hashem, to the Torah of Yisrael. And the question is, after all of the promises, after all of the challenges that we've read about in the Torah, and as we're listening to Moshe Rabbeinu's resume and parting words to his beloved people, we can see earlier on in the Sedra that the concept of memory is mentioned. And so if we look at chapter 7, verse 18, Lo sira mehem, you shall not fear them, that's all the nations around us. Zochar tizkor es asher asa Hashem Elokechem lefaro ulechol Mitzrayim. You will surely remember what Hashem has done to Pharaoh and to all of Mitzrayim. And this memory is supposed to be a source of encouragement. If ever we feel that our enemies are stronger than us, that just remembering the defining moments of our becoming a nation, the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus from Egypt, that is something that will help us to realize that when we are connected to Hashem through the Torah, there is no enemy that is too strong, too powerful. If we think that the ancient Egyptian empire was the mightiest power at that time, and that was reduced to rubble by Hashem in the most spectacular way. And we need to keep that memory alive within us, because just as that happened in those days, Bayomim Hahem Basman Hazer, Hashem is capable of anything. And this is actually continued in chapter 8, verse 2. V'zacharta es kol haderech asher holicha Hashem Elokecha ze arba'im shana b'midbar. And you will remember, you should remember the entire path that Hashem, your God, has led you on these 40 years in the desert. So from the memory of the experience of leaving the land of Egypt, to the memory of the 40 years in the desert and that span of time and events that is central again to our approaching the land of Israel, to our entering the land of Israel. So how do we keep that memory alive? How can we, as we thousands of years later, possibly living very different lives, certainly to the times of the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel in Egypt, certainly to the times of the children of Israel in the desert. So the Torah in this week's Sedra is giving us concrete ways to do just that. And the first I want to mention is the second paragraph of the Shema. We had the first paragraph of the Shema in last week's Sedra in Va'eschanan. This week we have the second paragraph of the Shema, and that is V'haya im Shema tishma'u. And we read that in the moment. That is chapter 11, starting verse 13. But the pasuk before that is something, again, that resonates today in perhaps ways that it hasn't done in previous years. When the Torah is talking about the land of Israel, it says, Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh osa. It is a land which God, your God, cares about. Doresh osa, Tomid eine Hashem Elokecha ba. The eyes of Hashem are continually upon it. Mereshis Hashana, from the beginning of the year, Va'ad Acharis Shana, and to the end of year. Actually, there's definite article in front of the second word year in that pasuk. And so we have seen these various campaigns, all eyes on Rafah, as our enemies are constantly trying to hold us responsible for the atrocities that terrorists have committed and the terrible destruction and civilian casualty count that, again, is the result of the deliberate strategy of Hamas, and somehow that is being twisted to blame Israel for these awful events that have been caused by the terrorists. But when we see that the eyes of Hashem are on this land, that Hashem is caring about this land, that is, Hashem is connected to this land, then we need to absorb that uniqueness, and we need to feel that potential for ourselves to have the special connection by the gift of the land of Israel, by being in the land of Israel. And that pasuk leads straight into V'haya im Shema tishma'u. And I think that this is the first memory technique that we can use from this week's Sedra, because in this paragraph we have got consequences. So we need to remember that keeping to the laws of the Torah will enable us to enjoy the benefits, and that shouldn't be why we do it. But perhaps as we start along the journey of absorbing the mitzvahs, of learning the Torah, of developing a connection with Hashem, we might need a little motivation on the lower level, on the human plane. And sometimes the favorable consequences, the reward, as it's sometimes called, for keeping the mitzvahs, that is going to be a very good memory job. And God forbid, the consequences if we fail to keep the mitzvahs, if we fail to develop that connection. And the consequences are spelled out very clearly, that if we are listening, and this is V'haya im Shema Tishma'u, if you will always listen, this is how it's translated here. The double expression of Shema, the way that Shema was used in the first paragraph of the Shema, that is the word used once has a certain impact. But when you have the double, when you have the emphasis, the repetition of emphasis, then that is stepping it up. There's a certain escalation, acceleration, and we've got to feel that encouragement that's being given to us by the repetition of this word Shema, which is such an important vehicle. The way that we listen, the way that we develop our sensitivity to the words of the Torah and really absorb them and apply them to our lives. And then we are given the physical rewards that will flow, that we will have rain in the right time, the right rain in the right time, and we will have plenty. And in this, we've got chalta v'savata, and you will eat and you will be satisfied. And of course, we need to guard ourselves against the very common trap of plenty, which encourages forgetfulness, which encourages loss of connection with Hashem, which encourages materialism, which takes us further away from the spiritual goals that the Torah is trying to encourage us to develop, to excel, to really build our lives on these spiritual goals. And so this second paragraph of the Shema, as it's referred to, that comes in this week's Sedra, I think that is a very important way that we can remember the ways that we are going to keep the strong connection that we have with the Torah and with the land of Israel, as we see from the posuk that comes before V'haya im Shema Tishma'u. The second way that's going to help us to remember, and we say the Shema twice or three times daily, so anything that is repeated on a daily basis, as long as it doesn't become routine and habit, is something that one is unlikely to forget because there's a constant repetition. But the second technique, method of remembering, is benching, is what we call benching, Birkat Hamazon, which is the literally translates as blessing of the food. And this comes in this week's Sedra as well. And this we can find in, just a moment, chapter 8, verse 10. So if we go back to chapter 8, verse 10. Va'achalta v'savata uve'rachta es Hashem Elokecha, and you will eat and you will be satisfied and you will bless Hashem your God, al ha'oretz hatova asher nosan lach. You will bless him for the good land that he has given to you. And one of the best ways to remember anything is, aside from repeating it frequently, is also to engage as many senses as you can in a particular activity. This is quite a common pedagogical technique. And when we are benching, we are engaging the senses of sight and smell and touch and eating. This is not technically a sense, well, we could say taste is a sense, and we are bringing all of those senses. This is a multi-sensory experience, and when we, apart from the life-giving benefits of the nourishment that we are feeding our bodies with, we are also using it as a way of taking our physical nature, our digestive process, and we are going to, on the foundation of that, we are going to have this opportunity to say Birkat Hamazon, which is the unique formula of thanking Hashem. And the fascinating thing, one of the many fascinating things actually, about what we call benching, is that we are obliged to bench after we eat bread. And the question is asked. We've just actually, a few pasukim before, we've read about the 7 species that the land of Israel is famous for. And how comes we don't have the requirement to say a special blessing after a special blessing of the kind of Birkat Hamazon after we have one of the 7 fruits? And what is unique about bread that is going to make it the perfect food to have this very special blessing? And if we look at various elements of the blessing, so first of all, we have the when there are more than 3 people present, we have a special invitation, hazimun, that we invite people to, and this is a special prayer that we say before benching, and this is very unique. We also have the fact that there are four blessings, 3 of which come from the Torah, and the 4th is added by the rabbis. And the first bracha that talks about the food, that is reputed to have been authored by Moshe Rabbeinu. The second bracha, which we thank Hashem for the land, again, the connection between the land and the Torah and the people is something that is being reinforced over and over again in this Sedra. And this is instituted by Yehoshua ben Nun, who leads the people into the land of Israel. And then we have the bracha of Yerushalayim that is instituted by David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech. And then we have the 4th bracha, Hatov VaHametiv, that was instituted by the rabbis after the siege of Beitar and the burial of the bodies that had not come to burial immediately after the Roman campaign that resulted in the people's death. And so when we think about this very special blessing that we say after we eat bread, and why bread? So the point about bread is that unlike when we eat the 7 fruits, we are effectively taking a gift from Hashem. And it is, we may have to look after the orchards, we may have to pick the fruit, but ultimately Hashem has created that fruit has grown, and we are picking it. But with bread, and it's fascinating to note that out of the 39 melachos that are forbidden, categories of work that are forbidden on Shabbos, 11 of them are to do with bread, and they include sowing, ploughing, reaping, binding sheaves, threshing, winnowing, selecting, grinding, sifting, kneading, and baking. And these 11 out of 39, so that's more than a quarter of the total of the 39 activities, are to do with bread. That is the human partnership, because although we're given the raw materials as a gift by Hashem, the human effort and ingenuity that is present in the baking of bread makes it a perfect candidate to represent a partnership between Hashem and man. And because of this, when we work together with Hashem, when we take the gifts that Hashem has given to us and we add our own effort and input, and we come up with a product, and then we are acknowledging, yes, we have worked hard and we have utilized our God-given talents, but actually this really is a gift from Hashem. And by appreciating that on such a deep level, we are weaving together these threads of the unique gratitude that we have for the nourishment, for the land, and for the opportunity to perform our mitzvahs. And with all of these various techniques, we are able to really have the memory of the experience from Egypt, the exodus from Egypt, and the sojourn in the desert. Take our past with us and let it inform and make our present a present that is connected to the eternal words of the Torah, the connection that the Torah is telling us, more up to date than any of the current news sources that are out of date the minute they're published, and invariably misleading and sometimes completely inaccurate. And so what we have here is the constantly up-to-date version of what we should be working on, what we should be focusing on, and how we should, in this way, develop a close relationship with Hashem, and then merit the security in the land of Israel and the ability to, with that concept of peace and perfection, really be shining lights out onto the world from our homeland promised to us by Hashem. And may our prayers that we uttered at the beginning, may they be answered by Hashem, and may we all be able to work on these special lessons that we read about this week. And please God, we should really feel that we are on a process after Tisha B'Av, after Shabbos Nachamu. We are on a process of, please God, the final redemption and coming together in the land of Israel as a nation. Wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for listening.